will not reap. As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or the ruach, the spirit, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child. So you do not know the works of Elohim who makes all. In the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not withhold your hand. For you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good. Truly the light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man lives many years, rejoicing in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many. All that is coming is vanity. You remember Jacob stood before Pharaoh, and he asked him how old he was? And he said, 114, 120 or something, are many of the years of my life, and dark or bad. And look at all the troubles and tribulations Jacob had before he ever got down into Egypt. Look at all the years he thought about his son, who was his favorite, having been killed and devoured. His daughter Dinah, was raped by the men of Shechem. And then his two sons went in and killed all the men of the whole city. I mean, look at all the problems that he had. And like everybody, and yet the scriptures talk about the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Yahweh is chosen. And yet the world calls him a deceiver. Something wrong in the concepts. Verse 9, rejoice, young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these, Elohim will bring you into judgment. You can do whatever you choose to do, but you will pay the price for what you do. Therefore remove sorrow from your heart, and put away evil from your flesh, for childhood and youth are worthless. Isn't that amazing? I mean, a lot of them, some of it anyway, not all, but wouldn't go back and trade, all those previous years before now, knowing than Yahweh and His Word than for anything. Just wouldn't do it. Now this is the chapter we're looking for, right? The last one. Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come, and the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them. While the sun and the light, the moon and the stars are not darkened, and the clouds do not return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house tremble and the strong men bow down, when the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look through the windows grow dim. When the doors are shut in the streets, the sound of grinding is low. When one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of music are brought low. Also when they are afraid of height and of terrors in the way. When the almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper is a burden, and desire fails. For man goes to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. Remember your Creator before the silver cord is loosed, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the well. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to Yahweh who gave it. Vanity of vanity, says the preacher, all is vanity. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yes, he pondered and sought out and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find acceptable or delightful words, and what was written was upright, words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and the words of scholars are like well-driven nails given by one shepherd. And further, my son, be admonished by these. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is wearisome to the flesh. We know that, huh? The mind will absorb what the derriere will endure. We all have heard that, right? Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. What it's all about. Fear Elohim and keep His commandments. For this is the whole. If you'll notice that word duty in most Bibles is not in the Hebrew text. Actually, that verse says, for this is the whole of man. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole of man. That's all that you are supposed to do. For Elohim will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether it's good or whether it is evil. As we read this and we think about this whole book, everybody goes out there and does the things that they want to do, right? And lives in the world. That's a good time for that to be over, huh? Y'all done good. We've had a long study here today, and I realize it's been kind of long, but we've been forced into some things, that, because of the situations upon us. But if you will, go with me to Ezekiel, and I'm going to read Ezekiel, and then I'm going to read a little short thing here. It's a tale from the Hasid. Kind of fits up today, but Ezekiel 37. 38. Yeah. Yeah, what's he said? 38:18. And the reason we're reading it is because, they have been taught, for years that this war is going to take place during this time frame. Ezekiel 38, beginning in verse 18. And it will come to pass at the same time when God comes against the land of Israel, says, Yahweh Elohim, that my fury was showing my faith. Remember, Gog, the word itself means a leader. Not by definition, but Gog is the leader of the land of Magog, the land that belongs to God, okay? Now, I don't know how many people realize this or not, but if you're standing on the Great Wall of China, looking north into Belarus, there is a sign there, in the Russian that says the land of Magog. Okay, so, that kind of helps us understand a little bit of where the area is that you're talking about. And I don't know how many people have ever really thought about this, but all the movies that we've seen, about Russia, and then the movies of the Cold War, and all the stuff. Look at all the churches and the buildings that you see in Russia that have been built over all these years, and yet they claim to be an atheistic society, but they weren't always that way. And Yahweh remembers the people in the land that was, not necessarily what is. It will come to pass at the same time when God comes against the land of Israel, says Yahweh Elohim, that my fury will show in my face. When Gog and those people come against the land of Israel. So that is going to take place. For in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath I have spoken. Surely in that day there shall be a great earthquake or a shaking in the land of Israel. So that the fish of the sea, the birds of the heavens, the beasts of the field, all creeping things that creep on the earth, and all men who are on the face of the earth shall shake at my presence. The mountains shall be thrown down, the steep places shall fall, and every wall shall fall to the ground. I will call for a sword against Gog throughout all my mountains, says Yahweh Elohim. Every man's sword will be against his brother. The mountains of Israel are where? In the mountains of Ephraim. And I will bring him to judgment with pestilence and bloodshed. I will rain down on him, on his troops, and on the many peoples who are with him, flooding rain, great hailstones, fire and brimstone. Thus I will magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations. Then they shall know, Ani Yahweh, I am Yahweh. A lot of people today don't know who he is, who Yehoshua is. They don't know he is Yahweh, right? But he is. And you, son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, Thus says Yahweh Elohim, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal, and I will turn you around and lead you on, bringing you up from the far north, and bring you against the mountains of Israel. Then I will knock the bow out of your left hand, and cause the arrows to fall out of your right hand. You shall fall upon the mountains of Israel, you and all your troops and the people who are with you. I will give you to birds of prey of every sort, to the beasts of the field to be devoured. He's giving these people to the birds of prey. There's going to be a feast, and all the birds are going to come in and feast on the bodies of kings and all those, right? You see how these little things tie in together with these little pieces of prophecy. You shall fall in the open field, for I have spoken, says Yahweh Elohim. And I will send fire on Magog and on those who live in security in the coastlands. Then they shall know Ani Yahweh. Where is he going to send the fire? On Magog and the coastland. Remember, coastland also means the islands. So I will make my holy name known in the midst of my people, Israel. And I will not allow profanity or profaning my holy name anymore. Then the nations shall know Ani Yahweh, the Holy One in Israel. I would just challenge all of you here in the next few days to go through and look at the scriptures that talk about profaning his name through your disobedience to his covenant. See if he doesn't, if not in those words, the action that takes place. If our disobedience brings profanity or profanes his name. Verse 8, surely it is coming, and it shall be done, says Yahweh Elohim. This is the day of which I have spoken. Then those who dwell in the cities of Israel will go out and set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and bucklers, the bows and arrows, the javelins and spears, and they will make fires with them for 7 years. This has never happened before. Never come to pass before. Still in the future. They will not take wood from the field or cut down from the forest, because they will make fires with the weapons, and they will plunder those who plundered them and pillage those who pillaged them, says Yahweh Elohim. It will come to pass in that day I will give Gog a burial place there in Israel, the valley of those who pass by east of the sea, and it will obstruct travelers, because there they will bury Gog and all his multitude. Therefore they will call it the valley of Hamon Gog, the multitude of Gog. For 7 months the house of Israel will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. Indeed, all the people of the land will be burying, and they will gain renown for it on the day I am glorified, says Yahweh Elohim. They will set apart men regularly employed with the help of a search party to pass through the land and bury those bodies remaining on the ground in order to cleanse it. At the end of 7 months, they will make a search. 7 months they're going to be cleansing and burying the dead bodies. Well, there's going to be a lot of feasting by the birds of the air on these bodies while they're, going through doing all these things. The search party will pass through the land, and whenever anyone sees a man's bone, he shall set up a marker by it till the buriers have buried it in the valley of Hamon Gog. Why do they set up a marker? Because if you touch it, you become unclean. Then the rules concerning clean and unclean are still going to be applying in the future. If nothing else, as y'all read these prophecies, Ezekiel and all these other books, and all the things it talks about coming to pass in the future, look in the books and what they say about the rules and regulations of Torah still being applied in the future, and then decide whether or not this Torah has been done away with. Verse 16. The name of the city will also be Hamonah, literally meaning multitudes. Thus they shall cleanse the land. Before we shut everything down, since we are in the Feast of Sukkot, and we're all fixing to go out and enjoy the Sukkah, and maybe it's a little cooler now, maybe not. In the shade, maybe it will be, we'll find out. In the Talmud, there's the Hasidic, and we think about the Hasidic people, and a lot of people don't realize that they started back in the 1800s in Russia. And this is a story from one of those groups at that time, and his name was Rabbi Nachman of a little city called Bratslav. And he was invited by a humble man to visit his sukkah, on which he had spent more than he could afford. He had purchased the finest lumber, expensive decorations, and beautiful pines for the roof coverings. Rabbi Nachman accepted the invitation and paid a visit during the feast, accompanied by a disciple. When they entered the booth, the disciple whispered to Rabbi Nachman that the sukkah was not constructed according to all the law. But the rabbi remained silent. After they left the sukkah, Rabbi Nachman observed to his disciple, "This man went to so much trouble and spent so much money for the booth, and you raised questions as to its validity. because of legal stringencies or man-made rules or precepts. In this season of our joy, talks about the birth of Messiah Yehoshua, the season of our joy. And as we look forward not only back to his birth, but we look forward to the coming of Messiah to gather us up, and we go to a wedding, and then we come back and we go into a wedding supper, which this also teaches us about. Let's remember that just keeping the Sabbath, keeping the festivals on the appointed day, keeping the things we're supposed to do is all part of the whole thing, okay? But loving your neighbor as yourself, and those of us who claim to be, okay, how can we love someone if we're constantly trying to pick them apart? If we're constantly trying to tear them down? We must recognize the times that we come together as a family are the times that we should exhort and lift one another up. There's a world out there trying to tear us down 24 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, right? We don't need that from among one another. We need to be exhorted. We need to be, lifted up. We need to be pushed to do right, not just be tearing somebody down, but lift them up and push them to do the things that they're supposed to do. We all remember the old saying about, which one gathers more flies, the honey or the vinegar, right? I mean, we got to remember, and I'm not talking about a false sense of sweetness or this kind of stuff, okay? But let's always remember that the Torah says one thing. We can always interpret and add to or take away as we see fit if we're not careful. We have to be very, very careful that we never take away or add to what the Torah says in our understanding and our interpretation. During this season of our rejoicing, okay, we must develop ways to encourage others to seek to please Yahweh. That's what it's all about. That our light will shine brightly. We can't do this if we're not obedient. I'd like to read one. Go to Romans chapter 2. Starting in verse 17. Now this passage here in Romans chapter 2, and if you stop and think about it, this whole thing was written to people that knew the law. So who is this being written to? It's written to the children of Israel. Those who were accepted that lived in Rome, right? Indeed, you are called a Yehudi and rest on the Torah and make your boast in Yahweh. That's kind of like us. We rest on the Torah. We make our boast in that we know and that we're doing and everything, right? And know His will and approve the things that are excellent, being instructed out of the Torah, out of the law. And are confident you yourself are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness. I've talked a lot about darkness today. An instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes, having the form of knowledge and truth in the Torah, in the law. We like to think we have that, right? You therefore who teach another, do you not teach yourself? That's a pretty stout statement. The question he's asking there, okay? When you're teaching another, do you teach yourself? Are we listening to what we say when we're talking to somebody else? You therefore who teach another, do you not teach yourself? You who preach that a man should not steal, do you steal? You who say, do not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who make your boast in the Torah, do you dishonor Yahweh through breaking the Torah? Now, one of the things we all need to recognize is this is Romans, this is New Testament commentary talking about keeping the Torah. And he said, you who make your boast in the law, do you dishonor Yahweh through breaking the law? For the name of Yahweh is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, as it is written. I said go out and search a little while ago about searching for the passage that talks about finding a place where it talks about blaspheming His name through our disobedience. This is it. Okay? We blaspheme His name whenever we claim to be teachers of somebody else and then we do something that goes against what this word says, and we blaspheme his name and make it dishonorable in the eyes of somebody else. Not trying to bring a damper on this season of our joy, but I just trying to let all of us, we need recognize really what we're trying to do. And we are trying to lift up and exhort, and we want our families and everything to join with us in this whole thing, don't we? We've got to be lights to them, not a cloud of doom, not darkness and this kind of thing. But we must let them see in us something that they really want. And I thank you for your time and your patience and everything. And that concludes the readings for this day.